The SubGenius Hour.
Hello, unknown caller.
Hello there, this is Cosmik Laila from the CLCI Webzine. Is this the real Reverend Ivan Stang?
The one and only, I think.
Okay.
How can any of us really know for sure, you know?
Well, it's 4 o'clock when all the evil people turn into 2 foot high.
They do?
Yeah, 4 o'clock, as far as Mr. Krangle is concerned, anyway. I've got around 24 questions, and we'll try to cram them into an hour's time. If we can't get to all of them, maybe we can do a part 2. How's that sound?
The way it often happens is I answer all the questions in the first one.
Okay, well, that sounds good.
I've had people go after I blathered on for about 15 minutes. They go, "Damn, you already answered all the questions I have."
Okay, all right, and so I just wanted to say a pre-warning guarantee.
This interview may contain trace amounts of rehashed questions as well as high levels of nuclear bear. You have been warranted.
For the uninitiated, could you tell us a little bit about your background, Mr. Stang?
Hey, that's Reverend Stang.
Reverend, okay, Mr. Reverend Ivan Stang, okay.
No, it's Mr. Smith or Reverend Stang.
Okay, so...
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to be a reverend, why be a mister? You know, that's just hits on a hog, on male hog. So, yeah.
Okay, so just if you could tell, for the uninitiated, because a lot of us are initiated, but there's some of us who don't know. If you could just tell us a little bit about your background, Reverend Stang.
Well, yeah, technically, I'm the sacred scribe, the 273rd sacred scribe of the Church of the SubGenius.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only one I know of, actually, but for some reason I'm that number. If there were any others before, the other 272, I really don't know anything about it. But I was recruited by my relatively new friend back in the late 70s, Dr. Philo Drummond,
mm-hmm.
to help him spread the word of J.R. Bob Dobbs, the saint of sales, avatar of Slack, household name. Everybody knows who Bob is. I mean, Bob Dobbs, Bob with quotes on the Bob,
mm-hmm.
or it's just any Bob. And he's that guy with the pipe, the smiling, generic-looking 1950s ad guy with the pipe, with the kind of insane grin, and yet it's a father figure-looking thing. That's what we're most famous for, is that picture of Bob and the doctrine of slack, which Bob told us to preach about. Most of us didn't really get that much slack until fairly recently, but his promise did come true. Anyway, he founded the Church of the SubGenius to serve the weirdos and abnormals of the world, who we call subgeniuses.
Yes.
Some are just insane jerks, and some are just jerks, and some are just boring imitators, but there are
mm-hmm.
people that you can, you just kind of go, oh yeah, that's definitely a subgenius. That's a sick sense of humor on that person there. So
it depends on your point of view, whether it's a sick sense of humor or it's just silly,
Well, we the one of the main points of the whole philosophy and religion is that there's two types of people in the world, us and them. And some people have this kind of extremist, cartoon-like black and white view of the world, where they consider people who are different from them to be literally almost subhuman. Well, they're wrong and we're right. We're the ones that really are. Technically we're the ones who are subhuman, but we're better than humans. SubGenius does not refer actually to the intelligence, because obviously it means just below genius. That's pretty much everybody, That's one of those things about Bob's divine salesmanship. The fact that he would come up with a term that would actually include almost everybody except the really boring, pompous, tedious people who really think they're geniuses. As if any of us really could define what intelligence really is. You can pass lots of tests, but if you can't change a tire, okay, who's the smart guy around here?
There you go. Moving on to the next question. Can you describe your earliest childhood memory?
Yes, I can. And I'm pretty sure it's really a memory and not just something somebody told me, because nobody else told me this. But when I was still in diapers, I vividly remember dropping my little diaper drawers. I must have been like maybe 2 years old. And my little excrements in there were blue. That's why I remembered that. They were bright robin's egg blue. It's a strangely vivid memory that I don't think is based on a dream or anything anyone else told me. This was something only I saw, as far as I know. And I can vaguely remember, I have memories of fishing with my late grandfather, who died when I was only 5.
Oh.
But it may be that, and also apparently when we brought the fish home, I sat in the bathtub and insisted the fish be thrown into the tub with me, even though they were long since suffocated. And there are photographs, though, and it may be that I'm just remembering the photographs and not the real memory. And of course, the problem is every memory is really just a memory of a memory.
Yeah.
They change gradually.
Oh, yeah, especially with time.
My father told some wonderful true stories of his adventures, but they changed. They actually got better over time. And I don't think he was adding anything to it consciously. It's just that his memories of his memories sort of improved. He was subconsciously memory editing. I guess we all do that. It's just hard to know how much you're doing it. A schizophrenic might not know they're doing it at all.
That's true.
How would I know?
Oh, yeah. So how did you meet Princess Wee Ardo?
Well, that actually happened kind of late in my career, when I was about 40. No, I guess it was even. I guess she was about 38, and I was 40 or so. I got invited to a New Age music and wisdom festival called Starwood, up north in Ohio, and I was very skeptical. I thought, what, are they trying to ambush me? Because at that time, this was 1990. I had authored a book called High Weirdness by Mail that really was very offensive towards New Age and all kinds of religious and political beliefs and artistic approaches. It was a funny, sarcastic book that I never could do again, because it's hard to be that mean. Anyway, I had written all this stuff about how crazy and silly all these Wiccans and flat earthers and pagans and stuff were, and then there's this pagan group inviting me to a festival.
Right, that's a little suspicious.
I mentioned it to a friend of mine. Reverend Bleepo Abernathy, that I invited this thing called Starwood. He said, "Well, Stang, I'm going to have to admit something to you. I'm actually one of those pagans. That's one reason I liked SubGenius. I've been to that Starwood thing, and all I can say is keep an open mind." And that first Starwood in 1990 that I went to opened my mind up, because there were actual hippies that still lived in the United States. I've been in Dallas for all these years, and I thought that had all just vanished. But these were actual practicing hippies, complete with the all-night drumming and topless dancing ladies and LSD. And, of course, they had a lot of woo-woo, new agey claptrap that turned me off. But long story short, I met Princess Wee, was just one of the club there, and we got to be friends, and it was 10 years later before we actually got married or anything. I had to finish being married to somebody else for 25 years.
Oh, I see.
I mean, someone else. Actually, my first wife's SubGenius name was, and this was her choice, someone else.
Okay.
Yeah. She was a great mom, and we had 2 kids, and both my kids are doing real good. They're old now. They're 40.
I can imagine, yeah. You know? Moving right on. When did you first become interested in fossils?
Well, since I was a baby. Really, I was a dinosaur nut as a little kid, and a monster fan. That's really what I am. I'm more of a monster fan than a sacred scribe or even a junior scientist. Dinosaurs were a kind of monster. I thought monsters were the coolest thing in the world, and dinosaurs were real. There's a story that my parents took me to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. We lived in South Carolina then, or Virginia, actually, Virginia Beach, where I was really little. We went to the Smithsonian, and my dad pointed at this big dinosaur skeleton and said, "Look, that's a brontosaurus, isn't it?" And I said, "No, Pappy, that is a diplodocus." And I was right. I've seen the skeleton since. There's a big difference between a diplodocus and a brontosaurus. And even at that age, I somehow knew. However, I never really learned about any more than the 20 known dinosaurs from my childhood. My son can rattle off 1,000 different species names, and my friend Dr. Howell, lots of people, but wow. I've never been able to keep up. When we moved permanently to this little town in Texas, Glen Rose, where the rest of my family had been since I left home, this place happens to be an exposure of something called the Glen Rose Formation. And there's a lot of Cretaceous marine fossils here. We just kept, when we take walks up and down the ranch road, which is made of gravel, we kept finding these strange shapes. And
that's interesting.
Eventually we realized this strange shape, there were certain types of strange shapes, and they were some kind of prehistoric shellfish. And then we went to our first Fossil Mania convention. Because this is a fossilized town, the dinosaur capital of Texas, the Dallas Paleontological Society has a convention here every October. We missed it this year because of the
caramba.
But
yeah,
I learned. I managed to learn a lot more. I got books about Texas fossils, and now I have a huge collection of the most boring fossils you can imagine. They're 100 million years old. They're all exact. They're replicas of the same creatures that are still around today. It's like clams and oysters and snails. That's about it. And dinosaur tracks. We actually do have dinosaur tracks on our own property, which is nice.
Oh, cool.
Them.
Oh, that's really cool.
They're not in excellent shape. They're pretty worn out, but they're definitely for real dinosaur tracks. This area is known for that.
Oh yeah, that's cool. You live in a place like that.
Says, when my parents moved here, I didn't move. Everybody lived. We were all city people, but they got some money and they bought this ranch land here in this little tiny town. It was kind of off the map. Now it's a tourist trap.
Right.
And really fairly prosperous. But It
Go
was
ahead.
the dinosaur. Even then, it was considered the dinosaur capital of Texas. And I had the SubGenius Church Bank here in Glen Rose, even though I lived in Dallas, because they had dinosaurs on the check.
Well, there you
And
go.
in those days, you couldn't get custom. There was no such thing as customized bank checks. You know, you were lucky to have your own name on it.
Exactly.
And these guys had a dinosaur for a logo.
Okay. What sparked your interest in bugs and critters, which is it's along the same line there?
Monsters.
Monsters, yes.
There came a time about 15 years ago when I felt like I'd just worn out all the monsters that I knew of. You know, the fictional monsters in movies and books, and the monsters that are people. You know, horrible psycho murderers and stuff, and the dinosaurs. I was going, where can I get some new monsters? And I remembered back when I was 12, I looked through a cheap microscope, and there were monsters in the dirt. Really scary looking things. Actually, just turned out, I know now they were just nematodes, very small worms. But they looked frightening through a microscope, and I got a $25 kid's microscope and stuck a piece of dirt under it, and there were the monsters again. Well, long story short, after about 5 years of blathering about how much I loved microbes, people had donated really nice microscopes. I ended up with a great stereo microscope, a really good standard one, and then a video one.
Cool.
And I filmed. Yeah, I'd always wanted to be a wildlife photographer, but I prefer to stay in air conditioning because it's really hot here. So I went, well, this way I can be a wildlife photographer without even having to leave the house, except when I go out and collect samples from scum water and pond water.
Oh,
I even
yeah.
had a scum aquarium. I had a scum aquarium that was an aquarium just for smelly, gross things.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you had to be careful with it. If you sometimes put something that turned out to be kind of an invasive species, and like copepods or little water fleas, they call them. They're tiny shrimp,
I see.
microscopic, but they leave the shell behind it. When I added copepods to my teeming scum aquarium, a week later there was nothing but copepod skeletons.
Oh,
They
boy.
ate everything, and then they died. So
Oh,
it was one of those, you know, nature lessons.
Right.
You just can't have too many predators.
That's true. And speaking of nature, it is known that you keep many different kinds of pets, both past and present. What was the most unusual pet you ever had, or most unusual thing a pet did?
Most of them have always just been cats and dogs. I had a cat that couldn't seem to drink water out of the water bowl until it had bit the metal edge of the bowl. It was a metal dog cat water bowl.
Oh,
thing.
really?
Yeah, and this cat would, it was really some kind of kitchen utensil, but it works great as a water container. And this cat it had to bite just with the side of its shall we say, canines, the sharp teeth, would bite the edge of that metal thing. It seemed like, God, I hope it doesn't have fillings. That would really hurt.
Oh, my goodness.
And then it would lap up some water, and then it would bite again, and then it would lap some water.
Oh.
I have a dog. My dog Buddy won't eat dog food out of a bowl. He has to turn the bowl over, which is kind of clumsy procedure for a dog, and spill it all over the floor. So now we prepare his food in a bowl, and we carefully pour it onto a little mat so that it doesn't get strewn all over the place, and then he eats it. It has to be in a bowl first, but then it has to be knocked out onto the floor.
I see. What about the Flea Stooges? Did they do anything unusual that you can note? You know, like being your 3 new cats.
Yeah, we took in 3 kittens that were abandoned by their mom. We think, and they now think that they're dogs and that we're the parents. they're pretty normal cats, although one of them, as soon as you reach down and touch him to pet him, he flops over on his back so that he wants his belly rubbed. You know, the others don't do that. The belly rubbing cat seems to be the killer cat. We found his first dead bird in the laundry room, and a little dead baby mouse, and both times he had blood on his chin.
Oh my goodness!
I'm just glad he didn't bring it and put it in my shoe or in the bed with me. I've had cats do that when their first kill. That's a good story. Once I woke up in the morning and there was something wet on my leg in bed. And I looked at my hand and it was blood. I was like the guy in The Godfather waking up with a dead horse head. And I was like, what is this? And slimy stuff. And it turned out my sweet little cat had killed his first mouse and brought it and tucked it inside the bed under the covers onto the top of my leg.
Oh.
The same cat put a mouse in my shoe one time.
Oh my gosh.
Being in Arizona, you probably understand that it's always a good idea to check your shoes because there could always be a scorpion, right?
Yeah, that's true.
There could always be a scorpion.
Oh yeah, and we got black widows and stuff like that too here. Okay, the next question: do you prefer coffee, tea, or frap?
Coffee is definitely the one that I would want on the desert island. That's pretty much the standard answer. Anybody will say it. Cigarette smokers will say that they need coffee more than cigarettes.
You put any frap in your coffee, or
junkies probably thinking with wishful thinking, go, oh, man, I need to get off the junk anyway. So yeah, coffee. And you notice addicts will still drink coffee like crazy. People in Alcoholics Anonymous or quitting smoking or whatever, they'll still drink coffee like crazy. Because it's an okay buzz, it's not really bad for you.
What about?
In fact, a certain amount of it is good for you.
Oh yeah. What about frap though?
Well, frap is pretty rare substance. It's most people don't even know what it is. I really don't know. It doesn't. It's kind of a moot point because once you've had real frap once, you never really come down. You're there for good. So it's there's no point in pursuing it particularly. Now, a lot of people, a lot of subgeniuses will call their cheap street marijuana frap because it's also something you can smoke in a pipe, like Bob has a pipe, and and that's real cute. In fact, I've even heard that term got away from us. I was listening to a rap show in Cleveland, and these what was the name of that? It was a fairly well-known rap group back in the early 2000s. I can't remember their name. Anyway, they were talking about, hey, somebody was in here smoking some good frap. I smell that frap, and the DJ had to go. Oh no, I remember. I heard it on tape because we had just left the station. It was the show after ESO Swamp Radio. These rappers came into the station afterwards and said, wow, somebody's been smoking some great frap in here. I mean, you're not supposed to do that in a radio station, so that didn't really happen, of course.
What about LSD?
I graduated from high school in 1971. Believe it or not, at that time, I was one of the very few guys in my high school that wasn't doing drugs. In fact, if you look at my senior yearbook, there's a quote that none for me, thanks, is the quote that goes with my picture. That's because a year earlier, I had tried LSD at the age of 16 without ever having even had a beer. I had never smoked pot or even had a beer. my parents were kind of heavy drinkers, and I was afraid of alcohol. But all my buddies were doing acid and going to football practice and taking exams and stuff. Well, I didn't react the way they did. I had a terrible, terrible bummer, bad trip, like something out of a textbook, and it basically kind of put me on the path that I'm still on, because I had to come to grips with my mind falling apart. Oh. I was too young. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought it was going to be permanent. I had what I thought were flashbacks. I'd lived in terror for a long time, and I had to get my own brain under control. And I kind of lost interest in being a stop-motion monster film animator, and became a little bit more of a writer and a scholar in a way, just because I needed to get more of a handle on the human brain. And I studied comparative religion and science my whole life. It's probably because of that horrible bummer acid trip. I didn't touch any kind of psychedelics for years and years until, I guess, about the third year of Church of the SubGenius. Everybody was doing it. And I finally tried a little tiny chunk, and it worked. It was good. And I tried bigger chunk. And that got to where I was tripping every weekend. I could drive fine on it, because I had a good supply. I knew exactly what was going to be in each hit. I knew what to take. It was almost more like coffee or light speed, but everything looked a lot better. Shittiest music sounded great. And rust streaks looked better than artwork. So I did that for a long time, but then after about 5 years of that, I kind of, it actually got kind of boring, and I could tell that it was time to knock it off, because my vocabulary was starting to slip. So nowadays, I'm actually a fairly helpful person. I've been fighting injury and arthritis lately, but I'm winning.
Oh yeah,
with,
I'm glad to hear that.
Therapies.
That's great news.
Well, I didn't want to do any interviews or anything for about 3 months there, because I was just.
Oh, I can understand.
I had to drink a lot of beer, and that's not real good for, for your health.
Yeah.
Disease, but that's the only kind of painkiller you can get in this state.
All right.
Unless you're a criminal. If you're a teenager or a criminal, you can get all the heroin you want.
Of course.
But if you're an old person with chronic pain, forget it.
I know, right?
You might get addicted to something.
Oh, no. Okay.
I'm 67 years old. What are they worried about? Jeez.
Exactly.
So anyway, but I basically, my mom was, I should have followed my mom's advice the whole time, but then so should she have.
Right. Okay, moving along. When you became involved with the Beholder's audiobook project, what was your first impression of the story after reading the script?
Well, I didn't read the whole script. I just read it because it's really long. Honestly, Cosmik, Laila, I thought there's too much narration. You have to tell the story more with action somehow, even if it's the dialogue carrying it along. That was my first impression. My other impression was, how the hell can you assemble a stage play when none of the actors are in the same room? I had thought about doing that myself, actually, for a SubGenius album project. I thought, well, I could have each guy do and girl do their bit and edit them together, and then I thought, no, there's no way that would work. It's just going to be clumsy. I was amazed when I heard, after you put all that stuff together, I was amazed how well it worked. I honestly expected there to be room noise, and hiss discrepancies, and things like that.
Yeah.
And I could tell that you did some filtering.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the editing process was very thorough, and and it took a long time. A lot of hours of work in there, but it came through, and it sounds pretty darn good. I appreciate your Your compliments.
Well, do you happen to have something called obsessive compulsive talent? They used to call it disorder.
Yeah,
I consider it a superpower.
Yeah, no, not that I know of. I mean, I know I tend to focus a lot on my work. I don't know if you would, classify that as the same thing, but if I do get on a project, I usually like to get it done and, try to make it as, quality as possible. But,
Well, that level of editing, it's hard to do if you don't have a little bit of the old OCD to kind of, make it fun and somehow satisfying.
That's possible. I've never been...
I've been editing.
Go ahead.
I mean, basically, I've been editing media since I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. I got my first movie camera. It was $10, Kodak Fun Saver. Still have it. It still would work if they made the film for it. But when I learned what a splicer was, now I get it. Now I see how movies work.
I have a lot of fun doing it. That's really what drives me.
Well, I made my living as a film editor and then a video editor for 20 years in the Dallas industrial film business. It's not very exciting stuff most of the time. I did get to do some documentary features that were really challenging, and that made me a lot better at understanding the problems of putting together, for instance, that feature documentary about Church of the SubGenius that Sandy Boone did. My buddies were all very suspicious of the whole thing. I don't like the questions she's asking. Why is she filming us for a whole hour? And I'm going, okay, you guys, look, documentaries like this, you can't write the script first. You just shoot a ton of stuff, and then it kind of edits itself, and I don't know how else to explain that.
Yeah, I totally understand as an editor.
Finds, and I had done that with pretty much problem movies, where I had to rewrite some of it and have them refilm a few things to make stuff connect together. I mean, we really had to fake a lot.
There's a lot of tricks, that you can pull in there.
So I've been manipulating film and audio tape and all that stuff. It's just what I do. I still do that weekly radio show, and it's mostly editing.
Oh yeah, I know a lot of it goes into.
I'm not in the station anymore. It's kind of a pain to record a phone call like we're doing right now, and. But I do it. But it's more and more these days. I'm running out of time. I've got other projects I want to do.
Certainly.
Again, weekly shows. It eats up 2 hours, 2 days a week, and so I'm kind of falling back on older recordings that I know are good.
Oh yeah.
Cuss words have already been edited out. I can just throw it all together pretty quick.
All right.
And I'm using a lot of old stuff from our original inspiration, a group called the Fire Sign Theater.
Oh yeah, I heard of them.
Well, you've actually made a radio play, and
yes.
That's what that group was known for. They basically revived the whole radio play thing for a new audience of stoners.
Absolutely.
Basically back in the 70s. And I'm still Facebook friends with the 2 surviving members, Proctor and Osman.
All right, cool. One more Beholder's question. Do you feel you identify with the character Arrow, and if so, in what way?
Well, I did a little bit because he's kind of a show-off and a showman a bit. And of course, I owe this to my dad, but I somehow picked up the ability to BS somehow. He was a lawyer and a hell of a liar as well. So that character seemed. I could see why you thought I'd be okay at that. I hope that Texas accent didn't wreck it too much.
So, Mr. Arrow, you thought you were going to drag me away kicking and screaming like a little baby, huh? Well, I've got news for you. The little baby might come to Texas and kick your bottom. How do you like that?
Good Lord, man.
And maybe I'll bring some bazookas next time.
Well, that's Cosmic Dano Tazan, just in case you wanted to know.
I had a feel. I was wondering.
Yeah, he just wanted to tip in and say hello.
That's right. I just want to say hello.
Oh, you sound just like a famous actor on movies.
No, I am not as famous as you.
Governor.
No, I am not as famous as you are.
Weren't you
But
governor
I'm still
of
I'm going to kick your bottom anyway.
Okay, well, yeah.
Okay, we're moving right along now. Okay, under what circumstances were you when you first heard the music of Devo, and can you remember which of their songs you heard first?
I definitely can. One Monday morning, all my friends were going, "Did you see Saturday Night Live?" No. God, you got to see this band called Devo. You'd love them. They did Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones, and it's just insane. Oh, okay, whatever. Well, my friend Philo had a better job, and he didn't have any kids yet. He was spending his money on things like record albums. And he had bought the first Devo album, and I guess eventually that Saturday Night Live got rerun, and I got to see when I heard their first album, I was flabbergasted. Really, the last time I'd heard a band that was that radical was Frank Zappa. You know, I mean, there was like a 20-year gap there.
How come Frank Zappa had a hard time getting his cruddy music on the radio, you think?
Well, it was just not radio friendly. You could hear Zappa on independent stations, and the occasional, when they invented album rock stations, you occasionally heard it. But Devo was not radio friendly. Zappa was not radio friendly. I never heard Captain Beefheart on the radio, ever.
Oh, yeah, no.
I heard there's a much more traditional band that I happen to like a lot called the Rainmakers. It's a very smart songwriting. And I heard their song, Let My People Go Go, once on the radio in 1976. And I wrote down the name of the band. I couldn't believe it. It was criticism of Christianity on a pop song.
Wow.
And I wrote down and ran to Sound Warehouse or whatever, bought the cassette, and just went, God, this is the greatest band ever. To this day, I hardly know anybody who cares about them, except they've got kind of a cult following. The songwriter is a guy named Bob Walkenhorst in Kansas City, Missouri, and I've let him know that I'm his biggest fan. But the Devo, I was just amazed that they even existed. And when their second album came out, it had a fan club P.O. box. And I thought, well, let's send them the SubGenius pamphlet. I didn't expect much to happen. I got a postcard back from Mark Mothersbaugh. Obviously had really read the thing closely and wanted to know more. Well,
cool.
Next thing I knew, me and Mark Mothersbaugh were pen pals, and they were about to do Love Without Anger as a music video. And I had sent Mark my underground movie World of the Future, which had animated G.I. Joes and Barbies hitting and raping each other. It was horrible. And they were planning a scene just like that. So they paid me $1,500 to do the stop motion G.I. Joe and Barbie fight in Love Without Anger.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
In 1984, I ended up getting this odd job this rich kid I knew wanted to finance Devo's next video, and it turned out to be Are You Experienced, the Jimi Hendrix cover. And they were going to film it in Dallas with me directing, but it turned out there was a lot of scheduling conflicts, and they had to do it in L.A. with somebody else directing, and they let me be assistant director. But I learned on that trip that I was not cut out for Hollywood.
Oh, I see.
I spent 3 weeks on that job, and I realized, Mark Mothersbaugh told me early on, he said, Doug, you wouldn't last a minute here. You're too nice. This place will chew you up and spit you out. And indeed, some of my friends got chewed up and spit out. My son had more of a boost, and he was able to actually become a director in the Directors Guild in Hollywood, and has directed one movie called Solver, which is really good, low-budget, brainy mystery on Amazon.
Cool.
For free.
Right.
Solver by Zandy Smith, Zandy with an X.
Okey dokey.
But basically, yeah, I've gotten to know quite a few rock bands, but they're always the kind that wear crazy outfits and have funny names. I toured with Guar, and got to know some of those guys real well. But we only did it. It only lasted 5 nights because the heavy metal crowd was not ready for spoken word. I got pelted by thrown objects.
Okay.
And,
how did you approach the radio in the early days? Were you cool or nervous, and why?
Well, I've actually had terrible stage fright from the very beginning, and we had our Slack didn't actually start until 1985. Church of the SubGenius started publicly in early 1980. But one of the first people that found our stuff in the trash can at Ripoff Press was Puzzling Evidence. He didn't have a radio show, but he'd been making these incredibly creative cassette tapes with some of his friends. And he sent us, without much explanation, an example of that. And Philo and I heard that and went, wow, they just drive around recording funny stuff. We could do that. So we started doing it. And I edited some of that together, and also was always fascinated with collage of corny old movie lines and radio stuff, you know. There weren't many examples of that at that time, but the Monkees movie had some great examples of that media barrage type of weird cutting. And
I remember that movie indeed.
Called the Projectionist also. It's a much more obscure movie. Anyway, I was like, well, we could do this. And I had a reel-to-reel recorder and a splicer, and I was already splicing a lot, so I started recording stuff and popping stuff and organizing it in crazy ways. And at some point, some FM radio DJ guy said, you ought to do a SubGenius show, bring a demo tape in. Well, the day that I played the SubGenius demo tape in one of those kinds of stations, a commercial rock station, everybody instantly knew this wasn't going to work. and when I left that commercial station, I thought, well, hell, I'll drop this tape off at this little non-commercial station, KNON. It's like the weird station in Dallas. And I, when I came by, it was located in an old house. I dropped it off with the station manager. He said, we were wondering when you'd show up. Do you want to do a weekly show? And I went, gosh, okay. And, you know, you can still download Hour of Slack #1. I was a little clumsy with the way things worked.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And the first few years when I found myself having to man up and be a SubGenius preacher instead of just writing things, I had to come up with kind of a persona, and for a couple of years I was a real good impersonator of Jimmy Swaggart. I considered him to be the most effective preacher I'd ever seen on TV. He was like the Mick Jagger of preachers. And I imitated him pretty well. I actually recorded some of his rants and just changed the words around, transcribed them. And I did that in the early days. And then later on, I kind of got my own kind of West Texas-y sounding preacher voice that was basically based on local preachers that we heard on the radio in Dallas all the time. That was Philo and I used to do that for fun. We'd just drive around, turn on K-Sky, Voice of the Gospel in Dallas, Texas, and listen to these insane preachers. And it was fabulous. And then we'd start preaching. We'd get all excited, start preaching along with them. And, some of that stuff still burbles up in the old tapes.
Oh, wow.
And, of course, we've been, we were all influenced, Puzzling Evidence, and Philo and me, all of us were influenced by the Firesign Theater. And that was like a glue that held our generation of radio weirdos together. Bleepo Abernathy up in Boston was a sound engineering professional in radio. In fact, he ended up working for Howard Stern for a long time.
Oh, that's interesting.
And he got to hate Donald Trump for personal reasons. Because Trump was, would come in and do shows there. And Bleepo is now an actor in L.A. He's doing character.
Have you ever seen a real UFO? If so, what was your impression?
No, I'm immune to UFOs. And I hear one.
Oh, that's the one. Okay.
Yeah, they sound like theremins. I do know that. They always sound like theremins.
There's two of them. Oh my God!
I was fascinated.
We're being invaded.
The UFO thing. I've never seen a UFO. I've been in a place where everyone else saw the UFO and I couldn't see it. So I think I was abducted a long time ago and hypnotized into not believing in UFOs as being space aliens. I mean, certainly there's unexplained lights in the sky. There's no question about that. But as far as the little green man aspect, I'm interested in the Exodus, not the little guys that crash their flying saucers at New Mexico.
The ones that can't seem to get their aerodynamics on straight, right?
Yeah. No, I really when I was a young fellow, I remember my first walk through the occult section of the used bookstore. To quote Nenslow, we all had that walk through the occult section, and I became fascinated with the paranormal, the occult, UFOs. I thought, if there's anything to this stuff, it's the most important thing in the world. Well, 10 years later, I kind of felt like there's a lot of really interesting people out there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I never saw a shred of actual real evidence. But like I say, I'm kind of programmed not to. The UFO people made it impossible for me to see them or ghosts. So what's left for a feller with cosmic leanings? Pardon the expression.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Junior science. I became a junior scientist, and that's really, that's where my monster love led me, was into natural philosophy.
All right.
Especially biological science.
Yep. Speaking of cosmic leanings, what were your thoughts when you first heard the Cosmiks music?
Well, I thought, this sounds like a 10-year-old girl is doing this music. How charming. It was all mysterious because there was a CD with these 3 pictures. It was real hard to tell, though, because the pictures were pretty terrible. And Princess Lee and I were both kind of intrigued by the whole thing, just because it was so quirky.
That's very funny.
Shut up, Tazan.
You did a song about that Iranian or Iraqi, I forget which
the Ahmadinejad song, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the most charming, cute things I ever heard.
What do you think ever happened to Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, by the way?
I don't know. I mean, I played that song on the Hour of Slack once, and then, but that was a long time ago. Honestly, Cosmic Laila, I've thought of you as like a 15-year-old for about 15 years now.
Thank you.
I've had that trouble. Well, my friend Onan Canabite is actually about 55, but when I first met him, he was 16. He was the youngest SubGenius. And it's hard for me to think of him any other way. He sent me a picture of his girlfriend, and I thought, why is he dating an old lady like that? And then I went, oh, wait, that's right. He's old now. The mind can play funny tricks on you.
That's true. If you could have any superpower, what would it be, and what would you do?
I think now that I've never really considered that before, but I'm kind of going with Batman. Rich. That's the superpower. I wouldn't know what to do with most of the other ones, like invisibility or flying or super strength. I don't really need those. It seems like Batman had the greatest superpower of all, and as we know, he's just about the only guy that ever beat Superman. And he did that just with his brain and skills.
And he had a lot of money, too.
and his fast, he could buy an army's worth of armor and stuff.
Right. Okay. What are your favorite top 3 monster or science fiction movies?
I could never give you a top 3.
No.
There's I did. One of my favorites, I can say 2 of my very favorites that really influenced me a lot were James Whale's The Invisible Man and his Bride of Frankenstein. Both of those are really wonderful old school monster movies. I know them by heart.
What about the Invisible Boy? Remember that movie?
No, I don't.
Oh, you should check that one out. That's a good one. That's got
I think it was
Robbie the Robot is in that one. He's a special guest star.
Right. I'm aware of it. I had to, when I was a kid, I had to pick which movies I could watch. I could only stay up late once a month, and The Invisible Boy didn't sound as good as The Crawling Eye. I may have been wrong, because The Crawling Eye sucked. It's terrible. I ended up watching that instead. That was a bad move. You had to go by the titles. I was 10 years old.
What about
you probably saw it on a DVD or something, but we didn't even have VHS then. If we wanted to study a Ray Harryhausen animated movie, we had to film it off the TV with an 8mm camera.
I know, right? The hard way.
Yeah, and you got scan lines too. It wasn't very efficient.
No, that's true. Yeah, what about the World's Greatest Sinner? That's another movie. The World's Greatest Sinner. Zappa actually did the soundtrack for that one. Did you ever saw that movie?
No, I'm familiar with its reputation, but I don't think I ever saw it.
Oh.
Or if I did, I don't remember. I might have seen it at a midnight movie when I was in college or something, but there's a lot of blank spots there.
Yeah, it's actually a terrible movie.
I saw The Great Dead once, but I don't remember a second of it. I think I slept through the whole thing.
Okay.
I saw Jimi Hendrix when I was 15, but it was acoustics were horrible, and I wasn't prepared for a live concert. I thought it was going to sound like the records, and some of those bands I just couldn't stay awake through. But I saw Frank Zappa twice, and I recorded a Captain Beefheart bootleg.
Oh, cool!
If you ever run into a Captain Beefheart from around 1972 in Dallas, I recorded that in a little club. I never got. I didn't have the nerve to go up and, be a fanboy.
Right.
I was too big of a fanboy. I didn't have the nerve.
You didn't have the nerve because you were too big of a fanboy. Do you think there's a similarity between P.T. Barnum and the Church of the SubGenius?
Well, sure, but it's just the basic rules of advertising. There's a seeker born every minute, and people want a show. My planned museum here is really a bit more a P.T. Barnum thing. So I'm trying to make a fraud creationist museum, only it's the opposite. It's a destructionist museum with fake fossils. Like, for instance, a Cretaceous devil skeleton. I have it. I actually have you can see pictures of it. A devil skeleton from 100 million years ago. We also have an alien skeleton. An alien crashed here in the Cretaceous, and I think he had a robot with him. We've got the robot fossil skeleton as well.
Okay.
I haven't put together the commercial for this museum yet, but that's eventually what I need to do, is make a kind of a fake commercial. We have a creationist museum in this town that's irritating to me, although it's really funny to go to. They stole one of our dinosaur tracks, long story short.
I see.
Misrepresenting the long ago. The guy convinced my dad that he was a scientist, and he went and wrecked one of our best tracks.
Oh, that's...
Anyway, I've always, that's been a sore point, and so I want to have, at least, I have no interest in giving people tours through this place, but I do want to make a cool commercial for a non-existent museum.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah. Do you think this? Yeah. Do you think the Church of the SubGenius, is it a normal cult, an evil cult, or a benign cult, or is it a cult at all?
Why not all four?
Good answer.
No, that's really easy. Why are those mutually exclusive?
Exactly.
They're not. Any cult worth its salt is going to be all of those. Fake, real, a joke, and whatever, a cult.
Right. All right. The weather has been acting quite wacky lately. What are your thoughts about climate change?
I believe that we are the extinction event that's possibly as bad as the one that took out the dinosaurs. That's us. It's too late. It's already... deed's been done. The oceans are irrevocably sickened, and the atmosphere is horribly messed up. That's going to take... it's hard for me to even imagine getting things back to normal. I just don't see how it's even possible. The species extinction is through the roof. I mean, it's insane. There's never been anything like this, except when gigantic climate disasters like a volcano or an asteroid striking the planet real hard. I know a lot about extinction events. I live on the site of the Cretaceous extinction event. I live on what used to be an ocean floor. And you can tell it used to be. And being a junior scientist, I've been following all of this my whole life, and like a lot of people who study nature science, it's more grim than people even want to think about. Let me put it this way: I'm glad that I'm old, and I hope to God that I die before the last gorilla does. That's one of my biggest fears, is that I'll be alive the day that I read about the last mountain gorilla. Well, when it's down to 3, that's pretty much the end, Penn Jillette said a thing on his show, Bullshit. Ticked me off so bad, made me so mad, and 6 months later, I got his point. But I forget what the subject of the show was, but he basically said, if I had the choice of saving the last chimpanzee on Earth or an AIDS-ridden junkie, I'd save the AIDS-ridden junkie. Now, I was just infuriated when I heard that. 6 months later, it sunk in. The last chimpanzee, what's the difference? When you're down to one, that's none. That's it.
Right.
You know, it's like, I get it now. Boy, that god darn old Penn Jillette, man, he's a trickster.
All right, just a couple of political questions.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. So, how do you think the presidential election and the peaceful transition of power went?
A little better than I expected. I don't believe that votes were stolen. I have evidence that there were votes that were trying to be stolen. I mean, the president was begging the governor of Georgia to make up 11,000 fake votes on tape. But somehow these 80 court cases have all found no evidence whatsoever, so that doesn't bother me. But I was never any kind of a Trumpy to begin with. I've been a libtard most of my life. Not to say that I'm a hater of Republicans at all. My whole half my family and a whole lot of my old friends are basically what you call conservatives, and I'm kind of a moderate libtard. Oh, my friend told me not to use that term. Anyway, I've been, when I was 14, I had a Nixon sticker on my little briefcase. And then when I was 18, I was ready to carry Chairman Mao's little red book. But then I got a job and had a family, and everything got a little bit more real. And I believe that people have to compromise. There's always going to be conflict. But the minute that you decide there's only one party and everybody else is not part of the party, well, we've seen that happen before in some other countries, and it didn't turn out very well. So I think there should always be two parties, and everybody should party on, dude.
All right, right on. Okay, what do you think about Pat Robertson's 2020 Christmas comment, which goes, quote, I think we're going to see a President Biden, and I also think we'll be seeing a President Kamala Harris not too long after the inauguration of President Biden, unquote. Does that sound like sinister footwear to you?
There's a standard, that's a standard common right-wing trope. I have a bad habit of monitoring extreme right websites and comments.
Yeah, that was actually in a video. He did it in a video. It just sounded a little strange because he's talking. It sounds like he's talking about that we're going to see a President Kamala Harris not too long after the inauguration of President Biden, which it's almost like an insinuation that like President Biden isn't going to be president very long, or like something is going to happen, or it just sounded a little weird. The Democrats are going to poison Biden. That's the standard story. The whole idea behind getting Biden there was so that they could, because he's so old and senile, he's about to die any second. He stutters. I mean, my God, he must not have any kind of a brain at all if he stutters. So, therefore, they obviously, the super leftists and socialists and actual commies of the Democrat Party want Kamala Harris in there, and so that's why they put Biden in. So they're planning to poison Biden so the commies can take over. Right, and then basically show that women can't be a president, basically, because they can't handle the power, right?
Well, I don't think it's so much that. It's that they've been taught that Democrats are really communists, and they don't actually talk to Democrats, and they tell each other not to look at the regular news or read those history books or anything, because that's all fake news. I'm waiting for somebody to go, oh, yeah, I guess you believe the fake news, and that's when I get to go, oh, you mean like the Bible? Which is a good way for me to get shot, actually. Where I live is a very, very conservative community. They're the sweetest folks in the whole world. It doesn't matter who you are, if you black or Asian, whatever, Hispanic, you got a flat tire on the road, almost any of them will stop and help you. If you have a hope and change button on, they might not help us.
You think
much.
Twice, right?
Yeah, but basically, the way I've lived in the big city and tiny towns, rural communities, my whole life. I've done both, and it breaks my heart to see how they distrust each other. The city people think country people are all dumbasses, and the country people think the city people are all dumbasses. And I just, it's sad. It's just really, really sad. It's that whole us versus them thing. And
they're all dumbasses, right?
Honestly,
yeah, they're all dumbasses.
Overall, well, the basic point of the Church of SubGenius is, if you really honestly think it's us versus them, and you think you're somehow superior or special, you're what we're making fun of. But it takes a long time for that to sink in, and sometimes when it does, they get real mad.
Yes.
There's lots of people out there that hate me because I eventually had to deprogram them and go, hey, look, I'm sorry, but I don't actually expect any aliens to show up on July 5th. Are you kidding? Jesus Christ.
Oh, there they are. There they are. You're not all right. There they are.
That's exactly, because we doubt our own prophecy, that's probably the most likely one to come true.
Exactly, right. Is the dump a huckster, you think?
Oh, the former president.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course. He was, I had friends in New York, and I used to travel to New York a lot. I knew who Donald Trump was since the late 70s. He's always been what he is. Most people never heard of him until he was on a reality TV show. But me and everybody else who ever read the New Yorker knew what that guy and his whole family were all about. Duh. It's just, what can you say? It's like there's different planets on one planet. And it's all based on, honestly, I think the internet wrecked everything. Because now you can find anything you want to believe proved on a YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how crazy it is, you can find 100 people saying that crazy crap on YouTube videos. And that's, I don't think that's been healthy for the society, really. You would have thought that access to the world brain would educate people better, but it actually just spread more disinformation.
That's true, and also there's an oversaturation of information, which tends to make people not, be able to filter out what is really happening and what really isn't. So, they just have a problem with overload in that respect as well because of the internet.
The first time I met Dr. Timothy Leary, I was opening for him. This is after his acid god period. He was basically a stand-up comic by then. And I said one question. How do you handle the input, the sheer input? And he kind of got a funny look on his face, and he paused for a second. And he goes, well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? That's it. That's what it's all about. How do you handle the input? Oh, okay. Well, yeah. He basically was saying, yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah.
You know, he was a famous guy. You know, he was somebody who's obviously had been through the grinder, several different unusual grinders.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you know, I was kind of an amateur at that. I got to meet a lot of those old hipster characters, Paul Krasner and Robert Anton Wilson, because they were invited to Starwood like I was. And I would sit around jawing with them. Mostly everybody just talked about movies. That was the easiest thing.
All right.
Robert Anton Wilson really hated the last of the Hannibal Lecter movies. I forget which one it was. The third one. He was furious about that.
Yeah, I noticed that sequels tend to, water down the original. I mean, like the third Psycho is not as good as the first either. So.
Right. Well, you can't beat your first big, thing. The Book of the SubGenius is we're never going to top that. We never even tried. Really, we did 2 more books like that, but they're not even in print anymore. That's as much due to office politics as anything else. But it's the first hit is always the best. And if you're going to age with dignity, you've got to be aware of that and encourage the next thing. Encourage the next people coming along. I've always been the first celebrity I ever really met was one of the Firesign Theater, David Ostman. He was so friendly and encouraging. And Ray Harryhausen, the stop motion master. I met him when I was really young. He was super friendly and encouraging, and I've always tried to.
That's really special.
Imitate them. It's always time for the youngsters to take the place of the oldsters. That doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. I've got 3 grandchildren, so I can blame everything on them.
Very good. Any plans for future SubGenius ventures?
Yeah, I really want to put together a whole bunch of books, reprints of the old Stark Fist magazine, reprints of our books that are out of print, new assemblies of old stuff that never saw the light of day because it was done between the time that we couldn't afford to print and mail magazines anymore, but before the internet.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
I've got boxes and boxes of amazing stuff that hardly anybody saw. About, I sent Xeroxes among our friends.
Cool. That would be totally new to the public because they never saw it. So yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, and actually, the old Stark Fist magazines would be new to most people, and we worked really hard on those. Those are all scanned. Cool. I scanned all that stuff years ago, so it's kind of ready to go. But everything takes longer now. I have to spend an hour exercising just to be able to get up in the morning.
It sounds like you're improving, and just you keep on keeping on with that.
Yeah, that's just I'm glad I have that option.
Yeah, you strike me as a very strong person, and I mean I actually admire those kinds of people. So I think you're an inspiration to a lot of other people out there who might be struggling with similar situations.
Well, I'm really lucky. I don't have any chronic illness. I've never been crippled by a drunk driver. I got a really good education. Yeah. My parents could afford dental work. Yeah, I've got a lot of privileges. I'm highly aware of them, and partly because of that, it's like I'd be a real puss if I, didn't keep punching. So I have no plans for retirement because I don't really have any money for retirement. I'm figuring I'll be assembling SubGenius membership packs and mailing them out until the day I croak. kind of like the ant farm guy and the sea monkeys guy.
Well, there
Those
you go.
were both things that were advertised in comic books and for decades, and they were both done by entrepreneurs who basically just had the stuff manufactured, and the guy and his family would mail the stuff out, and
Yeah, kind of like,
make a
yeah.
good living.
Mhm.
Everybody had an ant farm. I did, and sea monkeys.
Yeah, I know.
So
Well, there's a
eventually
place in the world
everybody-
for that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, everybody has to have a SubGenius ordainment sooner or later.
That's right. And just to let you know what I'm going to be up to, well, on Groundhog Day, I plan to release my new audiobook called Doom and the Antidote, which is a one-woman show. So I'm doing all the characters, all the voices in the story, and I wrote the story. And
Jeepers.
yeah, so I'll be sharing that with you, as well as everyone else.
You're not 15 years old anymore, right?
Wait, let me check. No, I don't feel a day over 14 though, to be honest. I don't perceive
good.
time like everybody else. I mean, if I look back and I say, oh, what was that, 10 years ago? I don't feel like it was 10 years ago. I feel like it was like, just yesterday. So I don't have that passage of time thing, Age is illusory. So I always go by that standard too. So,
Well, good luck with that.
hey man, it's all in the mind, as you know.
No, not.
The
I
way.
don't agree.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We can agree to differ. By the way,
Yeah.
we'd like to send you a flying saucer. Which color do you prefer, blue or green?
Blue.
Okay, you got it. We'll send you a blue flying saucer in the mail.
Well, actually, no. Actually, come think of it, it wouldn't show up against the sky if it's blue.
Well, it's-
Maybe green.
okay. Well, so you want green instead of blue? Because it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's green. It's green with the orange. They glow in the dark. So.
Oh, great. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. With the
Yeah, and this is Cosmic Dano. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Me.
yeah. We're reverends too,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. I probably hand wrote the address on there. Well, if
Wouldn't
it
be
was a
surprised.
few years ago. Recently, I use PayPal does the addressing and it's typed, but I used to hand address everything.
Yeah.
You want to hear my Stang imitation?
Sure.
Here's
So
Reverend Stang.
That's just a recording of me, isn't it?
Yeah, you're too sharp for us, Reverend Stangs. When we first heard of the Church of the SubGenius, it was actually on an old HTML type website where it was the ears of Bob Dobbs, and we were listening on an old web TV, which is not a computer. It was a device.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, it would hook up to your
I
television.
had one of those.
Oh, you do, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't work.
Well, I had one. Yeah.
They don't work anymore, though.
Yeah, they took them away back in 2013. They discontinued the service. But yeah, we were listening to the Hour of Slack on our little dinky web TV, and we thought that was interesting, and yeah,
We love it.
and we loved it so much, and so we just decided to reach out.
That was back. That was even before MP3s. I think we were using True Speech,
Yeah.
which was this horrible.
Right.
Real audio.
In the land of middies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like the 10 kilobytes for an hour-long show or something. Insane. It sounded horrible. Yeah,
It still came through though.
we started real early. As soon as there was any way to put audio on the internet, we started doing that. Long before the phrase podcast was invented.
Oh yeah.
But it
Before
was a
social
real
media.
radio show.
Before social media, for crying out loud. I mean, I'm serious. There was no
There was no butt book.
butt book or Insta butt or Yeah, or twiddle.
No. No, but,
Or tub you?
No, but there was the post office. It was just a slow motion internet.
Exactly.
Very slow.
Yeah. Email was like the new fast thing back then. Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, we've been digging it, and it's been great.
It's been a hoot and a holler, and really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm actually out of questions. You actually made it through the entire, crammed them all in, and made it through the entire thing, and fantastic.
Those were refreshing questions. I'm so glad. Most of them weren't about Church of the SubGenius. Oh, thank God. Oh, God, you can talk about something else for a change.
Yeah.
What a relief.
All right, there you go.
It was fun.
All right, yeah, I had a lot of fun too.
Good luck on your new project and your one woman show and everything.
Oh yeah, it's already finished in the can. I'm just gonna be sending it out on
Yeah, we're gonna be working on a new rock album too.
That's right. The Cosmiks are coming back.
Yay!
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna let you go now.
Yeah. Praise Bob and praise the Cosmiks.
All right, and praise Reverend Stang too, and praise Princess We Are Do.
I'll give her a big old kiss for you.
Thank you so much. We love you, man.
Nighty-night.
Nighty-night.
Слышь,